Hi there, my name is Tammy. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to be reviewing Creation to the Greeks by My Father's World. I hope that you stay tuned. Hi there, welcome back. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you are interested in any of the other curriculums by My Father's World, I have different reviews on, so make sure you check out those links as well. But today I'm going to be talking about Creation to the Greeks. It's a family style curriculum written by My Father's World. And this was our 6th year of using My Father's World. Again, every year when we end, we are kind of sad because we really enjoy the year. And so I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about it, break it down a little bit, and then I'm going to show you the books that come with the package and then some things that we added on and then our overall thoughts. So it's going to be a lengthy video. I'll try to break it up at the bottom if you need to skip through, but if you stay with me, you're an all-star. But first off, this is their curriculum, and it is a family style curriculum. So it is made for 4th through 8th graders, or if you have a child that is in 2nd grade or up, 2nd or 3rd grade, they can also jump in, as well as if they have a sibling in the older grades, or if you're in a co-op as well. I've seen them say that it's fine to join with the older kids. So they have everything written for the different grades in the teacher manual, and sometimes it'll say, you know, this is for 4th grade and up, this reading, or, you know, for the younger kids, you might want to pull out this or that. So it's everything you need for the year. They read straight from the Bible for their reading time. They don't read the entire Old Testament, but they take most of the major stories or verses and they read through them. So it's about a chapter to 2 chapters a day of reading. It's not overwhelming, and they give you just a really good scope of the entire Old Testament, which is beautiful, while at the same time learning science concepts that go along with that time period they're learning about. And then also history would be lining up with that same time period that they're learning about in Bible. And so it's a really fun year because there's so much biblical history in there, and it's all weaved together, which I never was taught that way. So for me, it's been really exciting to do. But for example, week 1 starts with creation, and then they go into the flood, and then they start after the flood with Noah's descendants in the Tower of Babel. And they go into the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia. So that is like our first known knowledge of civilization would be Mesopotamia. And then they go into Egypt. And then for science, they're learning about pyramids. And then for their Bible, they're doing the Bible feast. So they learn about the holy days, Yom Kippur. They do a Shabbat dinner at one point with the Sabbath dinner. You start the year off with that when you're learning about the days of creation, the day that God rested. The Jewish people celebrate Shabbat. And so you actually do that as a family. That was one of our very best memories. Very cool. We're able to bake some things to go with that. My husband was a part of that. And they give you the biblical way to go through that, but also with a knowledge of Jesus. So you're talking about the different things in the feast, but you're also using your knowledge of Jesus, who fulfilled the law, in those. And so you're praying through it. It's just beautiful. It's hard to explain, but it was a really awesome memory. Then you go into Job and Abraham while they're learning about the Indus River Valley and pyramids. And then they go through God's covenant with Egypt and Isaac and Hagar. Then they learn about, at the same time, hieroglyphics. And then in science, they're learning about light. And then it just goes on in that way where as you go through it, you put a timepiece on your timeline. And I'll show you our timeline. It's on the wall behind me. But you get these timeline pieces that look like this. And we color them and cut them out and put them up there. And so some things will have to do with like history in general, history of the world. And some things will be biblical history. And you just line them up in the dates that they occurred. And so it's really cool to see that all come together. So they go through learning about King Tut. At the same time, they're learning about crossing the Jordan River and Jericho being captured. You got Ramses, the Canaanites, the Philistines. At the same time, they're learning about Samson. So it's just a beautiful year. What I loved is that it really showed how all of that and how history all comes together. So I'll show you the books first, and then I will show you inside the teacher manual just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Because when I tell people about this curriculum and how much we love it, they always say, well, you've been homeschooling a long time, so it's easy for you to teach all these different things. And it's really not true at all, because I have friends who just started homeschooling, friends who are not teachers, who literally are like, this is the best thing ever. We absolutely love using My Father's World. It's so easy to teach. It's literally open and go. You don't have to do a lot of prep. It's very hands-on, but it's also not a lot of like cutting and gluing and those kind of things that you have to do with a lot of hands-on curriculums. And for me personally, the thing that I love about it is most curriculums, they have a lane that they stay in as far as an education style. So there's, traditional, which is what a lot of us learned in school, which is, books. You read the book, you answer the questions at the end, you do your homework. Like that is the traditional style of learning. A lot of written work and a lot of books that you're like a textbook where they're taking all these information and putting it in one book. So that's one style of learning. There is also the Charlotte Mason style of learning, which is a lot of different methods, but one of them in that is using living books, so real literature. So you're not just reading a textbook, you're reading a book that maybe was written during that time period, or you're reading a biography about somebody from that time period, or you're reading a fictional historical fiction, which is a book, fictional account, but of somebody that was living in that time period. So it's bringing you into that. That's part of the Charlotte Mason philosophy of education. Then there's also classical education. It brings in classical education with timelines and they learn history in chunks. So it's like the beginning of history, then the next part of history, they'll learn next year, and then the year after that, the next year. And so when you learn in that way, it really helps it to connect and stick a lot better than if you're just learning about all different time periods in history all the time. And they're just, 1 week it's this, and then the next week it's 2,000 years later, and the next week it's something else. So that really helps your brain to solidify the timeline of history. So again, that's one of the classical, part of the classical method they use. And then hands-on, which I don't see in a lot of curriculum. So they have a lot of hands-on, which we're going to talk about in a minute and show you some of the books that they use. But there's a lot of projects and things that help it to come alive to the kids and help really solidify that time period in history or that science concept in something that they can really understand. But it's also done in a not very overwhelming way. So I'll talk a little bit more about why I love this curriculum later, but that's just a few things that I have really fallen in love with about this curriculum. And so let's dive in and look at the books. If you have a child that is a grades 4th through 8th, they can all use this one curriculum and these books, all of these books for just any child that age. Or if you have a child who's 2nd grade or 3rd grade, they can jump on if they have an older sibling that's doing My Father's World. So like I said, that means that for your whole family, you're buying one package. And then the only thing you're buying really multiples of is the student sheets. And they are a little pricey, but because that's all you're having to buy for your other children, I think it's a really good deal. So I'm going to show you everything in here. One thing that a lot of people tell me about the curriculum is there's so many books that it seems overwhelming, but I just want to remind you that these are for like 10 months or 9 months, however long it takes you to complete the entire school year. So sometimes you might be using one book for a couple months or a week or two, and then another book you're using, the whole year, but you'll be using them at different times throughout the year. So for Bible, they use this book mostly, the Illustrated Family Bible. And so you can read books from here. You can read the Bible stories from here, or you can read them from the actual Bible, and they have them in there. They go through the entire Old Testament. And like I said earlier, you can use the Bible, the actual Bible, to read through it. And then also the option is to use the Illustrated Family Bible, which just gives real great visuals and also is great for your younger readers, but also has some incredible information on the sides for your older readers, which has like historical and archaeological finds that they've had that back up these Bible stories. And so that's really been awesome to read and understand. A lot of the Hebrew words, they'll also have them translated there. And so we've loved this book. It's a beautiful book. So we use that. And then if you have a younger child, they have this option for a coloring book that they can color while you read the Bible stories. My kids weren't really into the coloring. They would rather do a little drawing of it, like a Bible notebook. And so we would do that. And then this year they are using English from the roots up to learn the Greek words, because they're learning about, the Greek time period. And so they learn a different Greek word every week. Let me show you. So it's like this. And the curriculum suggests using a card, making like a little note card with the definition on the back. What we did instead is on the Facebook group for My Father's World, there's a ton of free printable attachments that parents have made and put there in the files section of the Facebook group. And so you can get a lot of really great things for free. So one of the things that I found are these worksheets, and they have where they can write the Greek word or draw a picture, the definition, and then the derivative of the word and the sentences for the word. So these are really cute. Another thing I found that I really liked is they had these flashcards that some of the parents had made for the Greek words. And so this is what we did. I would quiz them every week or so, and they really liked competing to see who could win more of the cards. So we did that for for Bible and for our Latin study. And then for history, we had lots of books. So this book comes with a curriculum, and it is a hands-on book for learning about history. So lots of the different projects that you can do. One of the things I love at My Father's World is they do have a Charlotte Mason approach to education in the idea of having a feast of ideas. But for me, I've used other curriculums in the past where they give you so many different ideas and it's overwhelming to pick a few. And so I feel like what My Father's World does is they pick just a few for you and then give you other options, like in the back of the book or, in these kind of books that you can use to further your learning if you want to. But here's another book that comes with the curriculum when they're learning about pyramids. So lots of hands-on fun things with that we really enjoyed. And then these two books are the spine of the history. Pretty much about one day, maybe 2 days a week, you're going to be reading from this book here. It's one of the Osborne books, so it's got a lot of pictures. It's super enticing and attractive. Has little maps in there, so it kind of grabs all the ages of the readers. And then another day of the week, you'll be reading from Streams of Civilization, which is more of a textbook form, but it is by Christian Liberty Press. It's super easy to read, and actually my kids really enjoy it. So usually you'll learn you'll learn about something here, and then this is just a more in-depth thing, usually for your 4th grade and up. So my younger child would just color or she would go play, but she'd always be listening because she always wanted to hear the more detailed information from Streams of Civilization. So those are really the main books for history. And then of course they use living books a lot. And so there's read alouds that we are going to talk about next, and they go with what they're learning about in history usually. Or there's also a book bin every day. That is an option that the curriculum recommends, that every day that your child spends 10 minutes looking at any book from the book bin. And that's going to be books about what you're learning about in history, or those are going to be books about what you're learning about in science. I just go to the library and I'll look up like the topic for science that we're doing or the topic for history, and I'll grab books from there. But in the back of the curriculum, one of the most beautiful things about all of the My Father's World curriculums is that they have these book lists. And so like this week 17, you're learning about King Tut. And so they have a bunch of great books that they've reviewed and they've vetted that are really good, that they recommend if you can grab them at the library, or if you want to buy one, they have a star next to some of them that they suggest are the #1 books to get. And so if you're going to purchase one, okay, I should buy this one because it's been vetted and it's really good. And then, if you're like this week, they were also learning about Samuel. And so there's some books about Samuel's life there. They were learning about a composer one week. So there might be a book about a composer there. But really you can use your local library and fill up your book basket. But here are just some books that I bought to put in our book basket. Black Ships Before Troy, Detectives in Togas, which Ezra read on his own. Seeker of Knowledge, the man who deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphics. The Egyptian Cinderella, the Jewish Craft Book, the Drawn Right Through History books are a big hit. And then Draw Through Ancient Egypt, the Osborne Illustrated Stories of Greek Myths. And so those were just some that I did purchase to keep in our book basket for a long time and really liked it. But throughout the year, you will be reading about a chapter a day from a book at different times of the year. And so some of the books that they have required through the year are Treasures of the Snow by Patricia St. John, The Tanglewood Secret, again by Patricia St. and Star of Light. These are all phenomenal books. We all loved them. We almost were in tears at different points in them. But these are Christian fiction books, and they really just hit on some hard to understand Christian and theological topics like forgiveness and death and adoption, healing, why God doesn't heal sometimes. It really hits some really hard topics, but in a real child-friendly way that really makes sense. So she's become one of my favorite authors after this year, and I can't wait to read her other books, but highly recommend these books. The Trojan Horse was a quick little one when they were learning about that. Aesop's Fables for Children, because it's written by a Greek slave in the time period that we are learning about now. And I didn't even know that this was written even before the New Testament was written. I mean, it's been around that long, which is really cool. And then there's one called the Children's Homer that we read. It was required for this year, and it was the only one that we really didn't love. And I think it was more because I started by reading it and not knowing the characters' names well. There's a lot of names in it. It's heavy Greek mythology. And so I was trying to say the names right and then didn't go through really reviewing really well what was happening the chapter before. And so once we started doing the audiobook of it, really helped a lot. And so I really suggest the audiobook. There's a free one on YouTube. Honestly, if I could go back, I would probably do the Black Ships Before Troy. And it's going to tell you the story still of the Trojan War, but it's much easier language, so easier to understand. So if you have younger kids, I would probably use this because basically it's just the children's version of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And when they're older, they're actually going to read those books for school if they're doing My Father's World. But in the younger years, they're just trying to introduce them to a lot of the Greek mythological characters and stuff. So that's my suggestion for that. And then the read aloud that we did add in this year was not part of the curriculum, but it was, I think it was one of the ones in the back that were suggested, or maybe I just saw it on a review somewhere, but it was A Cry from Egypt. And this was incredible. It was historical fiction, and it was all about a family that were slaves in Egypt during the time that Moses came and performed the miracles and the slaves were freed. So this was so good and really made all of that time period come alive. So I highly recommend this one. We will definitely be doing that again when we do this curriculum in a few years. We come back to it. So next is the science. Then we used Dr. J. Wild's Science in the Beginning curriculum. We really enjoyed it. All the experiments were very easy to have the stuff for, so it was easy to find around the house. Nothing was complicated. I think one of our favorite was just getting a mirror and paper outside and like lighting the paper on fire by the sun hitting the mirror. That was really cool when they were learning about light at the beginning of the year. But just very easy to do experiments that the kids really enjoyed, and very quick lessons too. They weren't very long at all. And so if you want to see inside of that, I can show you inside of that as well. But really love this one. And what I found out was that this was actually written for My Father's World. They reached out to the author and said, would you be willing to write a curriculum, a science book to go with our creation to the Greek time period? And they said yes. And so that's how we got this book. But absolutely love that. And I forgot we added in this, Our Little Athenian Cousin of Long Ago. That was another read aloud that we added in for the year, and really like this one too. It really made that time period come alive and the Athens, what was happening there. So that we really have enjoyed that one as well. There's another one that was in our book basket. And then for the God and the History of Art, this is the book that they use. It's really just it's a very classical approach to art. So they're learning like about shading, and they're learning about all the different technical parts of drawing, and then they get into painting and mixing colors. So it's very technical, but it's really not boring. It's very interesting, and the kids really enjoyed it. You know, they learned to draw people, things like that. And then they also study great pieces of art. And so it comes with these little art cards. They look like this, and they use them to really examine pieces of art and just learn about like even what is appropriate in art. That was one thing, about nakedness in art was something that came up a lot, and they dealt with that in a whole lesson talking about that, which I thought was really good. And then for handwriting, we used their recommended handwriting books. I don't know that I would say we loved them, but they did the job. We were learning cursive, and so I think that if we had a choice, we would go back to what we're using before for handwriting. They didn't love it, but they didn't hate it. So, and then for language, we use the recommended language lessons for today. We love this language. It's very different than if you've used traditional language courses where the kids are doing a lot of written work every day and they're diagramming sentences and all those things. They really don't drill that into them at a young age like a lot of other curriculums do. And I'm totally fine with that, because what I realized is that when they get to middle school and then high school, they're really refining those skills. So they're just introducing them to them, making sure that they understand what the subject is, what a predicate is, what a noun is, what an adverb is, and those things. But it's a gentle approach. So it's only a few minutes every day. And some days you'll have poetry. So some days they'll have poems for language. Some days you'll have a lesson like this about conjunctions, and they'll have a little bit of written work that they need to do. Some days they have picture study. And so I like that it changes it up and that it's different all the time. And this would be the 6th grade one. And then we have the 3rd grade too as well. We really have enjoyed those. We also did the writing. There it is, the writing skills for today. We've also enjoyed that. Ezra wrote some really funny stories, and he did one where he walked you through our house and described our house, and he did one about if his room had a meteorite in it and was causing everything to have no gravity and to float. So that was really fun. So the way that I use the teacher book, this is what it looks like. And you have your weekly layout. So it tells you Monday, and then you just follow it straight down. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you can change the dates if you want to put different dates on there. The first thing is kind of an overview. So this is God's covenant with Abraham and hieroglyphics. Then the memory verse that they're going to be learning. So this is going to be Greek word that they're learning for the week. And then here's 2 places we can check off spelling, English, and math if you want to. You can write what lesson they're on. And then here's history. So streams of civilization, page 56. And then it'll say grade 4 and above, page 57. If you want to read that, the decline and fall of the Old Kingdom. So it's just for your older kids. Then you have a notebook page, and that's making and writing on papyrus. And then they have a check mark for book basket. And then they have science in the beginning. And there's the lesson for that. Then you have your 20 minutes of reading for you to check off. Then God of the History and the History of Art. Page 13, lesson 11, foreign language, and then your read aloud that you're doing for the week. So throughout the week, they'll have different days that they'll be doing, and that's the heaviest week. Monday is like the heaviest day usually. Tuesday is a little bit lighter. You can see there's no science on Tuesday or Wednesday. There's only science on Monday and Thursday. And then for history, it changes up. So like the next day, it would be a project that they're doing, and then Thursday, another project they're doing. And then they're just putting a timeline piece for Thursday for history. And then art is 2 days a week. Music is 1 day a week. And then Bible is every day. Greek vocabulary is every day. Spelling, English, and math is every day. And then Friday is very simple. You're just testing for your Bible verse, and you're just doing your math, pretty much math and language, just the base. For Bible, they will be doing different scripture verses throughout the year. They learn the books of the Old Testament. They learn like Psalm 23, 2 Timothy 3, 16 and 17, the 10 Commandments they learn and memorize, Psalm 1, and then Isaiah 40, 21 through 31. So they memorize all that this year for their Bible memory verses, which is awesome. And so on this other side of the page, it'll have like any details that you need to know for the week. So for Monday, it has this little blurb here for learning. For Tuesday, it'll have something sometimes. And then Wednesday is all they have, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on here. And then again, it's the same layout every single week. And then you have a couple times a week where you'll have it'll say notebook, and that's going to be the notebook pages that are going to be a part of their workbook. And so this is one of my kits for this year. You can see we added some stuff from co-op even, but it's a full notebook. So we have some papers. They learn about Vivaldi. They learn about some other composers this year. They'll get that would be a student page. Let's see. Here's some of the Greek, like I told you, the Greek pages that they do for their Greek word. This would be an example of one of the student pages for the week, for the days of creation. Let's see. Here would be another one, the Tower of Babel. So there's only every a couple days they'll have one that they do. Here's the hieroglyphic. And there's so many. We did lots of fun hands-on projects. So we made they wrote their name in hieroglyphics in cookie dough. They learned to play lots of games. We made the tabernacle this year. We created that and made the whole thing. That was really fun. So just lots of hands-on things throughout the year. It was a lot of fun. So that's what the student pages look like. And that comes, one per student. They ask you not to make copies of that. And so you just have one per student with those. And so the way that I kept track of what we did and didn't do on here is I photocopied all of these for the year. So there was 34, I think, weeks. And I had bought this planner and I put them in the planner. And then I just checked off each week what we did, like that. So some weeks at the beginning of the year, I wrote down everything on the weekly plan. So I'll show you. Like I wrote out everything that we did, and then I added in some extra things that we did like co-op or just on the side. But I stopped doing that because I realized it was kind of pointless because you're just copying everything over here. And instead I started writing in here the extra stuff that we did. So that's an idea if you need to. I didn't really use a lot of the planner, but that's how we kept track of everything. And I think that kind of explains it all. Hopefully that makes some sense and you guys got an idea of the curriculum. Let me know what you think in the comments.